On the point of heartbreak, at the deepest human level, is it about, you talked about the bigger picture, the loss of the future, etc. in the past. Is the fundamental reason we have heartbreak as a device built inside of us because we are creatures that need connection, and it's a mechanism to make us stay connected and avoid becoming disconnected?
You literally could not survive in early societies without being part of the group. You had to belong. If you did not belong, you couldn't survive. You wouldn't get food, you wouldn't get shelter, you wouldn't survive. So belonging is just hardwired in us. It's something that keeps us alive. And we actually do need it to stay alive, even now. And what I mean by that is you take, for example, when they did these studies and they looked at babies who were in orphanages, and they thought all they need is they need food, they need to be fed, they need to be nourished, they need to have their diaper changed, they need those things. These babies didn't develop, and many of them died. It's called failure to thrive because they weren't held. They weren't held. They needed love. They literally died from lack of love. They couldn't survive no matter how much they just stopped eating. Failure to thrive. They wouldn't meet their developmental milestones. This happens in really traumatic childhoods even. So you actually cannot live without love. You need some kind of love. It doesn't have to be romantic love, but you need love. So we need that. So our main goal in life is to love and be loved. We may think it's about success and it's about appearance and all the things that we see on social media. We may think that's what life is about and everything that our culture sells us. But ultimately what we need is we need love. We need to love and we need to be loved. And so when that gets cut off, we forget that we have other people who love us. We forget everything else. Everything just feels extremely black or white. It's like I was loved and then I wasn't loved. And that's how it's going to feel for a little while.
It's scary. It's scary because so much of your work is centered on connection at like the fundamental level. And we're living in a world that feels like it's getting more and more disconnected than ever before. If you go back a couple of decades, young people used to see their friends once a week or twice a week. About 80% of people did. Now it's getting down to about 30-40%, which is really, really crazy. I did a talk on stage the other day, and there was 500-600 people in the audience, and the kid sat to my far bottom left here, raised his hand, and his question in front of 600 people was essentially, I'm lonely, and how do I make friends? He sat in a room with 700 people that are his exact age, and he's asking me, in front of all of them, which I respect, he's asking me the question, how do I make friends? A lot of people ask that. A lot of men come up to me and whisper it to me at talks. They'll say it to me. So they'll make, because we film a lot, they'll come up really close to me and basically express that. They'll say it in my DMs. How do I make friends?
Yeah. I get that all the time, to the podcast, to the column. That is one of the most frequent questions is, I'm lonely. How do I make connections? How do I make friends? From younger people especially, but older people too. And I think that it's really frightening because when I watch my son, who's 18, people think, look, going back to your graph, that they are, quote, seeing their friends because they're sending pictures of themselves back and forth on Snapchat to their friends. And they think that that's socializing. But it's so different. We learned this during COVID, that there's such a difference between being in a room with someone and, being mediated by a screen. But they're not even having conversations like you would if you were with your friend. Things happen, you have shared experiences, you're doing things together, conversation just more naturally flows. They're literally, they're sending texts to each other that are just emojis or, a picture of this. They're not really learning. So it's not just how do I meet friends, but it's how do I be in friendship with someone? And it's hard because a lot of people aren't interested in doing that. Like if you said at that age, let's hang out, sometimes people will, but really more people are just on their phones 24/7 and they think they're super social, but they're not. It's like the difference between vulnerability online and true vulnerability. So a lot of people, in fact, I was just on Instagram and I saw somebody saying, I'm going to be so vulnerable. I see this all the time. I'm going to be so vulnerable with all of you and share this thing. And all their followers say, that was so brave and lots of heart emojis and all of that. That's not vulnerability. to put that out on a public platform. True vulnerability is what this kid was asking you, which is when you are face to face with someone, if you're with your partner or a close friend or a family member, and you want to share something you need in the relationship or something that you feel shame about or something that is scary for you to take the mask off and share with somebody, that's true vulnerability because the stakes are high. What is this person going to think of me? Again, going back to I need to be loved. We all need to be loved. What is this person going to think of me? How will they love me if they know the truth of who I am, this thing that I'm about to share? Very different from sharing it on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. So I think that it's really important that we as adults look at how much FaceTime do we have, FaceTime in-person time, do we have with people? Are we really prioritizing that? And are we modeling that for the next generation?
What would you have said to him? Because what I ended up saying to him, because it really took me off guard, no one had asked me that, obviously, in front of a huge group of people. I said to him, what you've just done, do more of that. And what I meant by that is he had been so vulnerable and open, and I've come to learn that vulnerability in and of itself is a magnet, not a repellent that we think it is. So I said, do more of that. But I thought maybe that's not the best possible answer I could have given him.
I love that answer. That's a great answer. I also might have said, I want everybody in this room to turn to the person on your right and introduce yourself to them and ask them about one thing that they want you to know about them, because that's how you're going to start making friends.
We don't do that anymore.
But we can. You see, there's simple things. It's not like, people say, it feels so overwhelming. How do I make friends? And they think they're going to have to learn all these tactics and techniques when really it's just about be curious. Ask someone about themselves. And the people who are receptive to that, they might become your friends. People who aren't, I'm not really interested in them. Doesn't really matter.